think the same. It actually happened. The same thing happens when you like end the stream. It like ends early, like for other people, but it's just weird. But I don't know. Looks like we're going. Ask the
I'm definitely
audience.
going to try this whereby.com.
Yeah, for sure. I like it. I like it better than any of the other ones. All right. Yeah, it looks like people are showing up. Looks like we're live. So, Craig, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, my name is Craig Reed. I'm a Twitter apologist and I have a YouTube channel, Craig Reed TCR. And I kind of got started accidentally. I was a Christian. I became a Christian somewhere around 2000, 2001. And then I watched a whole bunch of, just for entertainment, I started watching people like Jacqueline Glenn and Amazing Atheists. And there was a whole crew of like first wave atheist YouTubers. And I was just kind of watching them just for kicks. And then at one point, I decided to get on Twitter. And then I was on Twitter for a little bit. And I was like, maybe I should start a YouTube channel. So I just kind of fell into it. And the rest is history, as they say, Mr. Jump.
Cool. So, yeah, I've known you for quite a while on Twitter, and we've talked a
Yes,
bit. And so I wanted to invite you on and have a conversation, my normal conversations, because I'm an atheist, by which I mean I don't believe there's any reason to believe in a God or any evidence for a God. Could you tell me what reasons you believe there are for evidence in a God? And then I'd like to tell you my position on those reasons and hear your thoughts on my position.
sure. Well, I actually prior to me becoming a Christian, I was kind of an agnostic. I would never call myself an atheist, but I was doing a lot of reading, a lot of searching, and I became intellectually convinced that there was a God somewhere in my late 20s. That wasn't necessarily like I believed in God, but I was like, I'm starting to really lean towards being a believer of sorts. And then I met my girlfriend at the time in New York, and she was a lapsed Christian. She said that she was raised as a born again Christian, but her version of that was a lot different than everybody else's. And we moved out to California. She went to a Benny Hinn. Actually, she went to a Benny Hinn meeting, a arena meeting. I had no idea who that was at the time, and I was really into like spiritual healing, things like that. And she said it's a spiritual healer, a Christian healer, and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Go check them out. And then she went to that thing, and she said, I rededicated my life to the Lord, and I had no idea what that meant at the time. I was like, okay, that sounds cool, you know. And then we moved out to California together, and she started attending this church down the way. It was a vineyard church, which is kind of a specific type of church.
Vineyard,
And
as in
one,
like making wine church?
well, yes, as in making wine, but it was called the Malibu Vineyard. It's a type of organization. It means something to Christians. It's like I think it means like not. I'm not 100% sure what it means. It means like non-denominational, like generally Christian, but not like a Baptist or something like that. Um,
Oh, sorry to
it
interrupt.
has.
Your mic seems to be like rubbing up against something. It's making like a little staticky noise.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's probably because I'm walking around. It's probably the. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Um, I'll try to hold it if I'll get up more. So she invited me to church one night. She started attending, and I was kind of like, whatever. I'll check it out. The night I went was because I was working this really crummy job, and I wanted to get out of work. So I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And there was some sort of prophet like guy. I don't remember who it was. I don't remember his exact name, but he started prophesying over me in the public. And he was like, your life has been like a war this whole time. And it really struck me at the time. Like I broke down and started crying that night. And it was a very, very powerful experience that I wouldn't say I believed it was God 100% that night, but that's what started the ball rolling. And then after that, I started attending that. Like the things he said just struck me right to my heart. I was like shaken up by them, let's say. And then I just started attending that church really, really fervently, me and my wife, for a couple of years. And that church fell apart. And then I've been a Christian ever since. So,
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine as a reason to believe in a God if you have really powerful experiences. I don't I don't usually argue against people's personal experiences because I think that those are something like, if I know that if I had those kinds of experiences, I would believe in Christianity. So I can't really argue against people who have those kinds of
Yeah,
experiences.
I mean that's the most honest position. Whenever somebody starts like that, I'm always like, okay, so yeah, the I would never expect you to hear my experience and go, I'm now a Christian, because that wouldn't make any sense either. But yeah, I mean, if you went and had a really powerful experience, and it would definitely change you to some degree, and it might even upend or your cosmology or what you thought was possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know that I used to be a Christian. I grew up Christian and was Christian and through most of high school. And if my prayers had been answered, then I know for certain I would be like a diehard, uh, like young Earth creationist kind of a Christian, pretty much. Of like, if anybody, whatever, if my prayers were answered, I would have just believed anything about God. God is the greatest, kind of anything. So I definitely
Totally.
know that
What
personal experience is
what were you
powerful.
raised as? You were a young Earth?
No, no, I would say if I was, I would just adopt that wholeheartedly and reject all of the evidence if my prayers were answered. So that's just the power of personal experience. I was raised just a Protestant kind of a thing. Praise Jesus, not really any specific denominational, just a general
Right.
Christian.
Just going to church on Sundays and maybe Wednesdays and that type of thing.
Yeah, I went to Catholic school, so I went to church like every Wednesday and Sunday. Like, oh God, that was miserable. So, but
I
yeah,
actually technically went to Catholic. I was technically raised Roman Catholic, but it was in my town was very very secular where I grew up. It was Westchester, is a suburb of New York City, a very liberal, very secular town, and nobody really expected me to believe. Like I was nominally Catholic. We went to church on like Christmas and Easter, and nobody in my family expected me to believe any of it. It was just like we were culturally Christian. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
So well, my general position is that I don't think any of the arguments or evidence actually indicate a God. Do you think any of those things actually work?
I don't think they work. I think they provide some evidence up to a point, but they're generally most of the arguments that you've heard, most of them, they provide some compelling, interesting points, but they don't usually work as proofs. Because a proof means there's no flaw and there's no assertion in the syllogism, right? Like in order for it to constitute a proof, it either have to be rock solid, case closed, or there's no assertion to be had. And most of them, like I'm sure you've heard the precept arguments, for example, about about laws of logic and things like that. They're
Yep.
compelling up to a point, like they're interesting, and I think they're worth thinking about and discussing. But they only get you they only constitute some philosophical evidence for God, as opposed to none. I don't think they're proofs in any meaningful way. You probably would agree with that, I would think.
Well, I would go further. I would say they don't count as any evidence at all because I think they're just not sound arguments. Because I like taking the precept argument that you presented as an example. If you presuppose that God exists to account for logic, you just presuppose anything else to account for logic, like the spaghetti monster or naturalistic pantheism, or that the laws of logic are descriptive and not prescriptive, and so they're a result of reality, which is my position. So that argument, the structure of argument, doesn't seem to qualify as any form of evidence to me because for something to be evidence, it has to be able to differentiate between is something imaginary or is something real. That's what the qualification of what evidence is. If it can't do that, it's not evidence of anything. So the precept argument does not seem to count as evidence from my perspective because it works equally as well for a God as it does for things that we can just make up, the spaghetti monster, naturalistic pantheism. And so that argument doesn't seem to indicate anything. It just seems to be something we just like to think such as justifies our position. I mean, would you disagree with that?
Um, Not as framed, no. I mean, obviously, you could say the spaghetti monster accounts for the laws of logic, and the laws of logic are transcendental, eternal. I mean, yeah, you could plug it in like that easily. So, as you said it, sure. The part about it I don't agree with it as they present it. Like, I don't go, that's a good argument for God. I just think the idea that there are laws of logic and the idea that there are mathematical truths to be discovered that I would call transcendent, which I think most people, I think you'd agree with that, right?
Not exactly. I mean, they're transcendent in the sense that they aren't a part of the world, so they're abstract. I would just use the word abstract. So I would say I see math and logic as descriptive. So if we know we exist, I think therefore I am, reality exists, and then the fact that reality exists and reality is itself, that is the basis of all logic, A equals A. Reality is itself and not itself. And so from just the fact that we know we exist in reality, we can derive logic as a language to describe that. Math is the same way. We know there is only one reality, so it gives us the number one, which is the basis of all math. And so math and logic aren't transcendental in the fact that they exist independent of reality or independent of nature. They are languages that humans made up to describe reality and nature. Like
so you would not. So you think like there's such a thing as a mathematical truth or a logical truth, but you don't necessarily think that it transcends the natural world necessarily. Is that kind of what you're saying?
right, I'd say it just describes the natural world. It's an abstract object.
I got you. Yeah, I mean that's definitely an argument in and of itself that people could break down. Let me ask you, you're a moral realist, right?
Yep.
Now, how many debates have you been in where you've taken that position as an atheist moral realist?
3 or 4, I think. I did
Because
some
I've
early
been-
on. I did one with RCA Apologist.
Oh, I gotta check that out. I haven't seen that one. I just saw the one you did last week, and that's the first time I think I've seen you do. I think that's. Did you do a debate with Adam Friended?
Oh yeah, I've done 2 with him. I'm supposed to do another one tomorrow, actually. Also, so yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out. Aren't you and him kind of have the same position with that?
No, we are not. We both agree that there is objective morality, but he thinks objective morality is in an evolutionary sense, whereas I think objective morality is an abstract object kind of a sense. So mine is more like the laws of logic and math, where it's descriptive language that we use to refer to something in the world, whereas he thinks it's objective in the sense that it's because it's a result of evolution and certain societies will survive better under certain moral systems than others, then that better survival metric makes that system more objective than the other system.
Right. So he's using almost like a utilitarian. It's almost like a
Utilitarian, yeah. He's going
Yes.
with the Jordan Peterson kind of a ethics system.
right. And you don't agree with that, or you?
No. So I think that evolutionary model of morality does make it subjective. It makes it contingent on the survival of the culture. Whichever culture happens to survive determines which morality is correct, which makes it not objective.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that that's technically subjective because it would be within a specific cultural context, and then it's not an objective like it's true, it's right, it's good. It's just better than others in terms of survival.
Yeah, the
That's
one
kind of-
example that a lot of theists I've talked to use is like, well, if Hitler won World War II, would his moral system be superior? And under the JP morality system, then the answer would be yes, because his is what
Right,
survived. His won the race. Whereas my answer would be no, because I think that morality is more like an abstract object, like a triangle or something. It doesn't matter who wins or who survives. The triangle is still a triangle. It doesn't. If Hitler didn't like triangles and he won the war, he'd still be wrong if he said a triangle has 4 sides. So.
Right. Well, that's the go-to argument. I mean, the reason why I ask is I've always been looking for atheist moral realists who can win the debate on. So how do you frame it and argue like that's a really strong, as far as I'm concerned, that's a really compelling argument for objective moral values, that Nazism is wrong irrespective of what anybody thought about it.
Yeah,
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I like to go with the example, a world without rape would be better. Like if you think if a world without rape would be better, then that's a good reason to believe in moral realism.
Right, but how do you? I guess I got to watch the debates. Are you winning with this argument? Is my question. How are you go? How's it going with this argument?
Well, the one with Godless, that was just it wasn't. She's not really a competent debater, but I did really good debates with RCA Apologist. I did one on abortion with SJ and Renee, and I forgot the last guy's name who was on the abortion side or on the pro-life side. But
Renee,
I did
German
that one.
Atheist, Renee?
What?
Renee, German atheist?
I don't know his full name. Renee Revolution on Twitter.
Revelation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from Munich.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good friends with him.
Yeah, so I partnered with him and we took the pro-choice side against SJ and somebody else.
Wow, so you do a lot of debates, right?
Yeah. It's my full-time job, actually. I'm a full-time YouTuber.
You're a full-time YouTube debater. Wow, that's
Yep.
funny. Now, what about epistemology? Have you done debates on, and how do you parse it out? Because you kind of studied it, haven't you? Or no?
Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time. I wrote a model of epistemology, and I got a publisher for my book, my first book, which is actually just a debate on morality. But that's an exciting thing. It's supposed to be published in the
Cool.
next year. But yeah, my approach to epistemology, I have done debates on that. I've done two with Randall Rouser, one with Trent Doherty, and I'm sure there's a few more in there that we've just talked about.
Two with Randall Rouser. I got to
Yep.
check that out. I
Yep.
know him. I read a lot of his tweets, actually.
Yeah, he's one
kind
of my
like a
favorite. He's
liberal.
one of my favorite guys to talk with. He's extremely him and Josh Rasmussen. I like those guys a lot. They're very, very smart and give me really good criticisms to get me to think about my approach and my epistemology better. Like Randall Rouser used fallibilism as a position against me, and that was like the one thing I was like, oh crap, he's got me on this one. And so I kind of had to adopt fallibilism into my position because he used it against me.
Josh Rasmussen, there's a guy, dry apologist, who I'm friends with, who's mentioned him as someone really like first rate in terms of Christian philosophers. Like he's a cool guy and he's really.
Oh yeah,
really
I've debated dry apologists too on Modern Day Debate.
What did you debate him on?
I don't remember. I think it was
I don't remember.
yeah, because it was
That's a
only
funny
it was a
answer.
while ago, but it was probably one of the ones. Just is there evidence for God or something?
Right. So you'll debate a whole bunch of topics. There's not like one or two topics. You'll debate any number of different topics.
Yeah, Modern Day Debate. James has me doing all kinds of crazy topics. Did dinosaurs exist? Did giants exist? Is the Illuminati real? All kinds of crazy stuff.
That's funny. Now, so all right. So break down the
Oh
epistemology.
yeah, Dry
So
Apologist is in the chat. He said we debated God's existence.
who won, dry apologist? You can say you.
Dry Apologist says TJump won. TJump is the greatest ever, and praise TJump.
Yeah. Good answer, dry apologist. So okay. So break down the Josh Rasmussen. How do you present, and what points are you making in your epistemology?
Oh yeah, so Josh, our conversation started with either the laws of logic precede nature or nature precedes the laws of logic, and he takes the position that the laws of logic precede nature, and I took the position that nature precedes the laws of logic. That was the basis of our conversation, our first one, because we had one on Capturing Christianity's show, and then we had another one on my channel. And so on the second one, he was just asking questions about my epistemology for the most part. We just went through a whole bunch of different topics. Like mine starts as there's a difference between conceptual and empirical knowledge. So if there's something in your head, some kind of like logic or math or testimony or intuition, those kinds of things are good evidence for conclusions that are also in your head. So like if I said I'm imagining a unicorn, my testimony of that is sufficient to justify the belief that I am actually imagining a unicorn. But
Right.
if I said I saw a living existing unicorn, that testimony would not be reasonable to justify there is actually a unicorn somewhere in the world. For that claim, you need empirical evidence. You need the verifiable, testable, scientific stuff to justify that claim. And so there's a distinction between these two kinds of knowledge claims. One is about conceptual kinds of knowledge, and the other is about empirical kinds of knowledge about stuff in the world, stuff in our head versus stuff in the world. And so to justify stuff in our head, you only need evidence of other stuff in our head, like math and logic. But if you want to justify something in the world, then you need evidence that's in the world, which is the empirical, verifiable, scientific stuff. And there's a distinction between those two categories. And you can't use evidence from one to justify a conclusion in the other.
So what do you mean by a distinction? I get the first part completely. So the unicorn is justified by virtue of you believing that you perceive what you perceive. But then when you try to match it with concrete reality, you need what? An empirical way to verify the phenomena?
Sort of.
Kind of what you're saying?
Sort of. So I'd be more specific and I'd say, in order to justify a belief that there's something in the world, you need some methodology that can differentiate between imagination and reality. That's the definition of evidence. Has to be able to differentiate between imagination and reality. And the one system we have that does that really, really well is science. So if you can scientifically demonstrate something, that is a great way to show that it's not imaginary and that it is real. It may not be the only way. There could be lots of other ways that we don't know of yet, and people can present them whenever they would like. But as far as I know, the only way to do that is the scientific verification.
Right. But so are there other experimental avenues that you know of other than just empirical?
For the most part, no. I think that's the only one that is really effective at demonstrating something isn't imaginary. It's specifically it's the novel testable predictions. And if you make novel testable predictions correctly, then you have good reason to believe whatever it was you're hypothesizing exists in reality.
Right. So that would, yeah. Okay. I see. So, okay. So you could see somebody having an experience that they say is a religious experience, and it's sufficient evidence, it's sufficient warrant for them internally to believe what they're believing, but there's no avenue necessarily to evidence it to somebody else or prove it to somebody else, which is basically what I would say.
Right. I would agree. I would say that. Well, there is other ways to demonstrate God. That is possible to demonstrate the supernatural. For example, if you said, "I believe as God exists, and the God is going to give me a gold brick whenever I pray for a gold brick," and then you pray for a gold brick and get a gold brick, that would be great evidence of a God. Or miracles would work the same way. If I pray to a God and He heals this person at a higher rate than random chance, and everyone else is healed who doesn't pray.
Well, that's supposed to be part of the point of a miracle, is that you see a miracle happen and you go, there's no way that could have occurred any other way than supernaturally. That's what makes it miraculous by definition. It can't really occur any other way.
So well, I would disagree with that. So I would say that you couldn't ever say something happening couldn't happen another way, because it could always just be an unknown natural thing. Like, for example, it could be that's an alien or something just messing with it. So you couldn't always say it's the only possibility is a supernatural thing. But you could say that if I predicted a supernatural thing, like if I said, that cup is going to fall over in 5 minutes because I have a supernatural friend named Bob who's going to knock it over in 5 minutes, and it happens at a repeatable rate, that would be evidence of the supernatural too, even though it's purely a natural event that the cup fell over. As long as you could make the prediction that it was going to happen using a supernatural entity, that would be evidence of the supernatural.
Right. So for something like a miracle healing, you would be skeptical up to a point, but then if you saw that there was no other explanation and somebody predicted it, like I said, I am going to pray for your friend tomorrow and his cancer will be cured, thus saith the Lord, and then if his cancer was cured tomorrow, you'd be less skeptical, let's say.
Sort of. So I wouldn't say that, because the first part when you said there isn't any other explanation, that part I can't agree with. There's always going to be more explanations. Like in philosophy,
right? But the question would be which is more plausible? Because then,
right. And so if you make the testable predictions, like if you can pray, this person will be healed, this person will be healed, this person will be healed, and they all get healed at rates that is higher than chance. Like if you can predict it and it happens, that is a great evidence, and that would be reason to believe. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. So you hear that, tripologist? Is he still there? We're going to train you to pray and cure the sick.
Yeah.
And predict it ahead of time. Is he still there?
Yeah, I think so.
So we're going to train him to do that, and then you'll be like, "Yep, these guys know what they're talking about."
Yep.
Tripologist says.
Absolutely. It's like this person's arm will be healed in 5 minutes. Is recorded. Like, oh God, that's a God. There is a God. Yeah, he's still here.
So basically, we probably almost completely agree on what constitutes epistemology and what constitutes sufficient warrant. I mean, what constitutes sufficient warrant for an experience that you had? There's the only way for me to demonstrate that my experience is real is to give you the tools to evidence it to yourself. It's the only way I can think of. Maybe there's a different way, but I've been trying to think of other ways for a while.
Psychic powers. Use your psychic powers.
I could try that. I'm feminine wiles. If I had them, I would use those.
But yeah.
So, what was your favorite debate? Who's the best Christian on our squad? Who's the best person in these debates?
Oh well, I'm not sure, because there's different ways to assess what my favorite is. Like if it was my favorite just conversation, my favorite position would be Pete Enns. I think I agree with Pete Enns, who's a theist professor, more than anybody else. His position, I think, is the most logical theistic position possible.
He does the Bible for normal people, right? That's
Yep.
Okay.
So I think
do you know God is Gray? Do you know that channel?
Nope, I don't know that one.
She's God is Gray. She's like a liberal Christian.
Gray or Great?
Gray, Grey.
Gray. I'll check that out. See if I can get her on too.
Yeah, if you can get her on, pass her over to me. I'll take her. I asked her, but she. We'll see. I'm still working on it. but yeah, so okay, so go ahead. So his position is the most logically reasonable, is the most reasonable for a Christian, according to you, right?
Yeah, I would say there's no issue with his position. There's no logical flaw. There's nothing he's claiming that exists or has is real that doesn't have evidence. Every part of his position is perfectly logically consistent. So that I have nothing about his position I can criticize, pretty much.
So how would you describe that? Like, what does he believe? He believes the Bible's like metaphorically true or something?
Oh no, he believes he's essentially a fideist kind of. So he thinks that none of the evidence or arguments work. That's not like the teleological, cosmological, ontological. All those are just crap that philosophers do for no reason. And he believes because of his personal experience, his revelation from the Holy Spirit, and reading the Bible, and those are the three things. But there's no actual independent, verifiable evidence that shows that God exists. And so it's a waste of time to spend your time in philosophy trying to pursue those because they're just junk. And the only reason to believe would be personal experience, revelation from the Holy Spirit, reading the Bible.
Okay, so that, and you think that that's completely logically sound?
Yep, there's absolutely nothing about that is incoherent. So, because for my position is just all of those philosophical arguments we can demonstrate do not work, like the pre-supper one we talked about earlier. We can know those can't differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real, so those don't qualify as evidence. But like your personal experience, that if there is a Holy Spirit and it does reveal things to you, that counts as evidence. I don't know if you can verify that in any way, but sure. And if you believe based off of what the Bible and it's meaningful to you in like the Jordan Peterson kind of way or like the cultural Christian kind of way, sure, that counts too. So all of those are perfectly reasonable, and there's nothing wrong with that position at all.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, actually. So how does he try to win people over, and how does he go about it?
Yeah, he just says, here's the Bible. I'm going to introduce you to the person of Jesus and see if he can make a meaningful impact in your life, and that's it. He doesn't, no arguments, no evidence, just Jesus. Here's the story of Jesus. Here's the Bible. Here's how you can talk with the Holy Spirit, and that's it.
Interesting. Does it work?
Well, I think that's really other than just indoctrinating kids for the most part, that's probably the only thing that really does work. I don't think any of the philosophical arguments actually compel anyone. They're only effective for people who already believe for the most part.
Well, I tend to agree with that too. I think, yes, I think there's a reason to participate in them. There's value to it, but I totally agree that they don't really work. And I think that there are people who become Christians every single day of the week. And the real question would be why? What's compelling them to become a Christian? And there's more important emotional hooks at a church, in the environment of a church, that people are actually looking for and seeking out than philosophical justifications that that's not really how people live. That's
Right.
not how people are wired up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you think would be, just objectively speaking, what would you think would be compelling reasons if I were trying to be logically consistent, like Pete Enns, but offer people some compelling reasons to join up with Christianity? What are there any good ones?
Well, there's the cultural reasons, like the Jordan Peterson kind of a method, that being a part of the Christian community offers you a lot of opportunities in life, and it gives you community and friendships and job opportunities and people to talk with and spend time with and go to barbecues with friends, family. There's a lot of cultural benefits to being a Christian in a Christian country. And so that would be one reason to adopt at least the cultural Christian perspective. And if you wanted to ask, like, well, is there actually a reason to believe in God? That would be just purely the personal stuff. Like if you can speak to Jesus, or Jesus has personal revelation for you or has some kind of positive impact in your life, then that would be a reason to believe for that particular person.
Right. Like if because one of the things that I say is my prayer life gives me peace of mind. And that's obviously reporting that it gives me peace of mind. It's subjectively true, therefore it's true.
Yeah, if something gives you peace of mind, that's a perfectly valid reason to believe it. Like I'm perfectly justified in believing I am the smartest human to ever lived just because it makes me happy. That's the only justification I need.
Now, but part of the thing that gets, like, the anti-theists are kind of right, because part of the reason why people, or at least a huge chunk of the motivating factor for deconversions, is that they find the group of people that they're hanging out with who call themselves Christians are not like accepting, loving, kind. They're intolerant. They're kind of douchebags. They're hypocrites. So that as far as I'm concerned, that's a big factor in deconversions.
Yeah, it's a justifiable reason to believe if it has a positive impact on your life, just like it's a justifiable reason to disbelieve if it has a negative impact on your life. So if believing in God causes you a lot of stress and anxiety and pain, like if you are in the LGBT community and being gay as being a sin in the Bible,
that as a sin against God, and you're struggling internally, then that's you would consider that a valid reason to kind of. I mean, it makes sense to me why someone would be less inclined to practice their faith if it's like warring against who they think they actually are. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so if somebody, like if you, because there are other people who are more hardcore about this than you. I mean, you sound like that all things being equal, you wouldn't necessarily go looking for a defeater to your beliefs as long as they were giving you some stability, peace of mind, you were satisfied within a community. If a defeater wasn't presenting itself organically to your life, you probably wouldn't go searching for one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The study of philosophy and the search for truth is purely optional. Like if you just want to live your life and do what you enjoy and just find value in what you find value in, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would actually think that's probably a better way to live than searching for truth.
Right, because it's how most people live anyways. Even when they deconvert, they give lip service to the idea that they now base all their thoughts on evidence, but it's only a couple areas and that's it.
Yep.
The rest of the time they're pretty much going by hook or by crook, basically, like everybody else. You do what you need in life. Your philosophy is basically you do what you need to do and you do what you want to do. And I can't think of anything else that. You can try to structure your life according to like Stoicism, Christianity, or stuff like that, but those people are rare.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's pursuing truth in like a scientific, philosophical sense is hard. It's really, really hard, and living your life that way is extremely depressing. It's much better to just find what you value and enjoy and to adopt those things just because you value and enjoy them. Like you don't need that logical justification. You don't need that kind of evidential support that God exists. You can just say, I believe because it makes me feel good. I believe because this is something that is meaningful to my life. And that is the best position to have.
Right. Well, that's how a lot of people, like that's how most of the people who attend my church are. They just don't realize it. Like that's even how my wife is. I mean, being a Christian is very important to her, but she's not going to search out defeaters for Christianity. It's part of it is she goes to the church, she gets value from the community. Part of it is, the rituals and the traditions like Christmas time and things like that are really meaningful and significant to her, So there's a whole galaxy of emotional reality in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And my goal isn't to like abolish religion. Like I don't care about that at all. My goal is just to point out that the philosophical arguments just don't work. Like it's bad philosophy to try and say these work. And so whether or not people believe in God or not is totally, I'm not interested in trying to deconvert people or to convert people to atheism. That doesn't make a difference to me at all. My goal is just to show that the philosophical arguments that are bad don't work, and to make
so that's the only thing you're doing when you're debating someone like Josh Rasmussen. You're just trying to debunk the actual argumentation underneath. And he's trying to most of the Christian apologetics, we would probably agree, are pushing the issue too much. Like they're overshooting the mark in terms of what they are philosophically proving.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, it's weird. We agree.
Yeah.
we almost agree on a lot of stuff.
So yeah, that's why that conversation with Pete Enns was one of my favorites in that sense. But there's other things that are like, I really enjoy my conversations with Randall Rouser because he challenges my position though. So that's another one of my favorites just for a different reason, is because his intellectual pursuit is the most challenging of anyone I've talked with. So that one would be my like other kind of favorite debate. And then with Josh Rasmussen for the same reason. So I think those would be the two classes of my favorite debates, would be the ones that I think everything about your position is perfectly reasonable, like Pete Enns, and then the ones that challenge me the most, like the Randall Rouser and Josh Rasmussen ones. Those would be like the two categories of my favorite debates.
Right, but Josh Rasmussen is trying to actually prove by logical structure God's existence by philosophical argument. So you guys are disagreeing.
Yeah, him and Randall Rouser both do that, but I think, like you said, I think there's value in that approach because it's as a intellectual metric to try and see if you can justify a position and then deconstruct the position is a valuable way to learn better ways to do philosophy. It's like in a chess game. The only way to get smarter is by playing a smarter opponent. Or John Stuart Mill, who said that if there is not a common dissident or not a dissident to any commonly held truth, we must invent them and impart unto them the strongest possible arguments a devil's advocate may conjure up. Because if you only know your own side of the issue, you know little of that. So the idea of having two opposed philosophical positions battle it out is an incredibly important thing to do in philosophy in order to make progress. So I think that the enterprise of religious apologetics is very important because it presents that alternative position to attack and to battle with to try and find the best idea, even though I think that it's not very justifiable in the end.
Right. So you think just judging by pure philosophy, it's not successful, but it's a worthwhile endeavor because you get smarter, you start thinking more clearly about argumentation, logical consistency, all those things that go up to making a good philosopher. But ultimately, you would abandon. So you would side with the existentialists and say that the real philosophy is clearly facing that there is no higher power or being or thing like that. Once you really dig in.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. So I think evidentially, I don't think there's any reason to believe in a God, specifically not like any of the gods we know about or have named, because like the Christian God specifically, the problem of evil is just such a huge problem. It makes it essentially impossible for me to actually believe that God is real.
So interesting. Well, I was going to ask you something. So you debated what I'm going to go check the later on this week. I'm going to watch the Randall Rouser and who else did you mention? Pete Enns, right?
Pete Enns, Randall Rouser, Josh Rasmussen, Dry Apologist, Renee, I forgot his last name.
Renevelation.
Yep.
Renevelation is how he bills himself on Twitter.
Yep.
So what happened when you deconverted? Have you been an atheist the whole time?
No, I brought up Christian, and I deconverted sometime in high school. So I've had major depression my entire life, and I prayed like every morning, every night for help from God, believing he was real and believing that there was this all-loving being who cared about me more than anything in the world, but that he was not doing anything to help me with my suffering was something that was completely disanalogous to me. It caused me such dissonance. I couldn't believe that. I put all my hope into God for help to try and solve the pain I was in, but because he never did anything for years and years and years, I eventually stopped being able to believe there was such a thing, and that's what caused me to deconvert from Christianity.
I got you. So if God had answered your prayers in a way that you found that you actually thought God was answering you or helping you in the struggle, you probably wouldn't have deconverted. That's what you meant, right?
Oh yeah, I absolutely wouldn't have. I'd be completely wholeheartedly Christian.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The same thing happened to my mother, because when she was younger, she was a really, really devout Catholic, and she used to tell the story all the time. But she prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed that her mother would not die of cancer, and then when her mother died of cancer, anyways, that's when she started. She didn't really deconvert, but she would have if she had been 10 years later when she was coming of age. There wasn't really popular atheism the same way in like the early 60s and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's mine was not specifically, mine was more like having close, meaningful relationships, friends, family, those kinds of things. Because I was pretty much alone my entire life. No friends, no family, no close relationships. And praying for that to have, like, instead of to like survive cancer or something, praying for that and having no help at all for years and years and years was, because it was such a simple thing to fix. It's not like curing someone of cancer, which is a pretty significant shift. Just having friends or something is such a small thing.
You didn't have any friends growing up?
No, I was completely alone for most of my life.
What? How come?
Major depression, messed up past, really dark childhood, lots of bad things.
Wow, interesting. So you were praying to solve or heal that, and you got no answer as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, I never got any for years and years. Not until first, like, close friends I had maybe was in 25 to 27.
So after you were an adult, did you go to college?
Did a few classes. I like audited a few classes. I didn't try to get a degree or anything. It's not worth the money.
Wow. So you didn't have any friends until you were 25.
Yep, pretty much nobody.
How did that work in school? You didn't you were you persecuted, or did you not meet anybody, or
No, I was pretty much just socially isolated. I never spoke to anybody, and no one ever spoke to me. I was just pretty much alone.
wow, that's rough. Yeah. No wonder you gave up on God. This wasn't helping you out. You're like,
Yep.
and you were praying the whole time, like, come on, give me some friends, God. And he's like, no.
Yeah, pretty
Deal with
much. Yep, pretty much.
it. So yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. That it's I mean that you would rather hope that he didn't exist than that he totally ignored you while you were crying out to him and you were really hurting. So you would much rather. I mean, that's what I heard you say. Is that what you? That's what you're kind of saying. It was too much cognitive dissonance to think that he was just abandoning you to like suffer for no reason.
Yeah, it's
And
like if you believe there is an all-loving being, then it would require that all-loving being is actually going to do something to help you in your suffering. And if he's not doing something to help you in your suffering, either he's not all-loving or not all-powerful. It's one of those two. And eventually, I just stopped being able to believe at all. So.
wait, what is like a Pete Enns or Randall Rouser? Did you ever tell this to them? What did they say?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it to them, but yeah, so they usually respond to the problem of suffering by saying there's some justifiable reason, the free will defense, those kinds of things. Pete Enns actually said, I don't think he actually gave that. I think he said it's just one of the problems he just doesn't know the answer to. It's just so hard
Right.
to
I mean,
know.
that's exactly like I would never lay an argument down because you're talking about your real life, and how you actually experienced your life. So an argument would be the wrong thing. But I'm just wondering if somebody, did you ever ask a clergy member while you were going through this? Did you ever like ask a church father?
Yeah,
They couldn't help you at all. They didn't have anything to say.
not really. They tried to, like, I did a lot of things. I went to therapy, went to a lot of pastors and church members and counselors and those kinds of things, but they never did anything to help. There were just lots of talking, and talking isn't really what I wanted. So.
Right, but so you went to like therapy. Did the therapy help at all? Did anything you do when you went looking outside of yourself for service in this? Did anything you latched onto help?
No, absolutely nothing. It was all useless.
Wow, God, that's really weird. Because I mean, I think the church people could easily just at least comfort you a little. You come here and we'll introduce you to this little kid over there, and you tell the kid hang out with him. I know he's annoying, but hang out with him. You know what I mean? Like they could easily solve at least some of the problems.
Yeah, I wish that kind of happened, but nothing like that happened. I was never introduced to like people who I was interested in or who I liked or who I liked to spend time with. That never really happened. I was interested in like a bunch of old people who I wasn't really that interested in spending time with or talking with, but no one really my age, no one really who was actually qualified as like a real friend.
Wow. And no therapy that helped because they have like behavioral type therapies.
Yeah, like CBT and DBT and IBT, and there's even like the ECT, which would like shock your brain. They have a kind of like a weaker version of that called starts with an M. It's magnetic something therapy. I tried that. Like none of that ever worked. None of that ever worked for me.
Wow. So and then what happened when you were did atheism somehow help you? It pulled you out of your shell, right?
Sort of, yeah. Like some of the early friends I made, I went to the local atheist college group, made some there, and I met some friends that the philosophy groups. Met a friend at a Toastmasters thing. So I started forcing myself to just, I mean, I think what really kind of helped was just forcing myself to just go out and fake it. So I was like really heavy. I weighed 340 pounds in my early 20s, and I lost almost 200 pounds over the course of 2 years by just doing exercise and going out and jogging and biking around the lake a lot. Got P90X, one of the exercise things in late night TV. And then I started just going to social events, meetup groups, college student groups, other kinds of event things. And forcing myself to meet people. Gym memberships are awesome because all the gyms offer like free 7-day trial, free 30-day trial. So you can just go to all the different gym memberships for like 5 years and for free, which is great. And I started doing those kinds of things to meet friends. That was kind of what made most of a difference for me.
Right. So you pushed yourself to interact and just kind of like fake it till you make it, like join a group and then you're interacting with people. But
Yeah.
atheists, the thing that I've noticed about atheists is that they're at least at this point, they're better about reaching out. Like if somebody starts connecting with them and saying like, you know, I'm questioning my church or something, they tend to be like 5 or 6 people who are like welcoming and, you know, come chat with us, join our little atheist clique. Right? I mean, that's how I see it. They tend to be better about that than Christians from observation. I don't know if that's true. It's just how it seems.
Some of them and some of them not so much. Like there are some in the Satanic Temple, that group of atheists.
Right.
Being associated with that group of atheists gets you stigmatized. People have lost their jobs. And so finding those kinds of communities in certain groups as an atheist is more difficult because there is active persecution against atheists in a majority Christian country. There's a paper that was recently published on that. And so it is difficult for many atheists. I didn't have that much of a difficulty because it's not like I'm going to lose my job as a YouTuber or anything. So
right. As an atheist YouTuber,
yeah.
Unless we prove that God exists, then you're totally SOL.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, Craig William proved God. I'm totally gone.
Yeah, no, totally. But so wait, so when did you actually officially become atheist? When you were in high school, or?
Well, I lost my faith in high school. I don't think I would have called myself an atheist. I didn't even know what the word was back then. I think
And you lost your faith because as far as you were concerned, you were praying to God to heal you and give you friends, and God just didn't care, didn't hear.
Yeah, so I essentially it was like praying to a milk jug. Eventually, the milk jug doesn't do anything. You start to feel like maybe the milk jug isn't conscious. Maybe it doesn't actually exist. And that's kind of how I lost my faith. But yeah, I didn't adopt the atheist label until probably my early 20s when I started watching Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins, Dennett, the Four Horsemen guys, and they started to use the label, and I could identify a lot with what they were saying. Their arguments like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. I agree. I'm an atheist. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was saying. There was nobody like that for my mom when she was around the age where you would start, exploring that. Was like early 60s, and there was nothing around like that for her to latch onto. Nothing in the popular culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that makes sense to me. That totally makes sense. And then you started doing, how long are you doing YouTube?
Full time for a little over a year, maybe a year and a half now.
So it's the only thing you do? You're making enough off of it to.
Yep.
Cool.
I do like a plasma donation at CSL Plasma, but that's mostly for the weight loss because it burns calories. If you donate blood, your body has to burn calories to remake it. So I'm still trying to lose like another 20 pounds so I can get a tummy tuck skin removal stuff to get rid of all the loose skin I have in my stomach because I want to see my abs. So I'm still trying to lose weight, and I go to CSL Plasma to donate blood, but they pay you. So I get paid like $400 a month to just donate blood, which is great.
You make $400 a month to donate blood?
Yep.
I didn't know you could make that much.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
great. It's awesome.
I did when I was in college. I did a medical experiment, and we took a drug for a weekend, and they studied us. And I don't remember exactly how much we made, but it was something like $700, I think, which was really good money for back then.
Yeah.
For like basically doing nothing. You went and hung out for 12 hours and 15 hours, and you took something and they studied your effects. But dang, I didn't know you could make that much. $400 for.
Yeah, so you go in twice a week for an hour at a time, and so that's about 8 hours a month, and you get $400. So that's a decent amount of money.
Yeah, it's not bad. That's like, yeah, so cool.
Yeah, and it helps.
So
the weight loss is just worth so much more. Like that's 600 calories. You burn 600 calories per donation, which is like a cheesecake. You get a cheesecake, a free piece of cheesecake from donating blood, and you get paid for it. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's probably. I got to sell it to my wife because my wife thinks I'm getting fat. She insists I'm getting fat. I kind of am, but not as much as she says I am. So I get it. So you had your moments when you were young, and you were basically reaching out to God, and as far as you were concerned, there was no answer. And then gradually, God turned you into an atheist because He ignored your pleas for a better life.
Yeah, pretty much. It was just you pray to someone for long enough and nothing happens. It just happens. You just stop believing they're there. It's like a relationship. If you keep sending messages to someone over Facebook or through mail or whatever, and you never get a response, eventually you're just going to stop doing it because they're not talking to you. They're not there.
Right, and the only really compelling Christian types that you find are people like Pete Enns, who are kind of like, they're not trying to make arguments necessarily for God's existence. They're just kind of laying it on the table. I get a lot out of this in terms of subjective meaning. It's it's real to me, and I get community and this and that. And it matches with you as like reasonable and real, understandable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense to me. Definitely. So you debate anything, like you pretty much debate anything, and you debate like twice a week?
Yeah, I have one scheduled a week on my channel. That's the required one I do for my job, my work. And then I get invited on to 2 or 3 other channels usually a week, like Modern Day Debate or Adam Friended or the other Christian shows from Delman. I forgot his first name. Delman Smith Jr. He's got a good one. I like his. Yeah, I follow a lot of actual apologist shows like his and Capturing Christianity, where they invite on people because I can actually use them to like, oh, I can invite that person on my show, steal their guests. It makes it a lot easier for me.
Yeah, no, I actually watch a lot of Capturing Christianity too, just because it also keeps you on top of who's out there. Because I like I like a lot of what he does. I like the debates and the guests he get.
Yeah, for sure. I think I love inviting those kind of people on. I think that's how I met Josh the first time, was on his show.
Yeah, I should probably interview Josh. That would probably be pretty interesting.
For sure.
I'll try to reach out to him. I think Dry Apologist knows him. I'm not sure, but I think he does.
Well, I do for sure. So I'm talking with him via email pretty regularly.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll try to get him on my channel, interview him. That would be pretty awesome. So you do Friended a lot?
Well, he invites me on every once in a
Adam
while.
Friended?
We like to argue about morality. That's essentially all we do, is just argue about morality.
Yeah, but I thought you guys would mostly agree on morality, but you're finding a subtle distinction, because he's kind of a moral realist too, isn't he?
Yep, we both believe in objective morality. He just thinks it's evolutionary, and I think it's abstract.
And you could debate for an hour over that.
With Adam, you can debate anything, because Adam has a very strange way of debating.
But he steelmans your position.
No, he completely misrepresents your position and like misunderstands it quite a bit. So it's like you gotta explain it in very simple terms. But yeah, I do do debates on pretty much any topic. So I want to do more political debates, because I'd love to be a politician. Like a president of the United States would be a great job. I'd take that job.
Yeah, man, that would be a pretty cool job. Rock star would probably be a better job, but president of the United States would be decent.
Yeah.
Movie star would be good.
Yeah.
So do you sometimes do a devil's advocate position where you debate something you don't really believe just to see if you can win?
Not as much.
Don't they make you do that when you join a debates club in college? Don't they make you debate both sides of the issue just to polish up your skills?
Yep, for sure. I mean, I haven't done that as much, especially not for the existence of God. I know that my second video on my channel was the best argument for the existence of God. So I've done that hypothetically, but I've never actually been a part of a debate where we've formally set that up. I've seen one. I think there was one with Randall Rouser where he did that. He took the atheist position against some big atheist who took the Christian position. But no, I haven't done any of those kinds of things.
Okay, so what would you be debating politically? Politically could be fun. There's debates I could get involved with on that. on those grounds.
Oh yeah, so I have my own political theory. Like I have different policy issues I'd like to see enacted, different things I'd like to put into place as a politician. And so I would debate to support my political ideas in politics. That would be my goal.
Right, but what is that, like center left? I'm guessing you're center left with some sort of some form of government help thing.
Yeah, so I'd probably be like a centrist, almost a dead center. So there's a lot of things that Republicans get right, and a lot of things Democrats get right, and a lot of things Libertarians get right. And the essential foundation of my position is we would look at all of the different areas in the world, all the different countries, and say, what are they doing really well? We should copy that. That's essentially the best way to find a policy is look what other people are doing, find out which ones work really well, and copy them.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So like the education system in Finland is phenomenal. They're like the best in the world. And one of the things they do is they give out no homework. There's no homework in those schools up until like 8th grade or something. Like we should be copying that. We should be doing that for sure. Other systems, like I like universal basic income in certain areas for certain demographics. That's a great system. As long as
that might actually get a foothold here because of the coronavirus.
Yep.
They're talking about, the last I saw, they're talking about putting it in the next stimulus package for at least the duration of the, some, like we got those checks, and there are some people I know who are thinking that those checks should be for the next 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually really like it. I paid taxes on my YouTube channel. I had to pay like $400 in taxes, and I got $1,200 back in a stimulus check. Like, yes. But yeah, for sure. I think that the universal basic income, the problem with it, though, is that you still need some way to drive the economy. And so that would be in addition to something like artificial intelligence having more jobs being taken by machines. If you can supplement most of the low-income jobs with machines and then just pay them in the form of a universal basic income, that would work as a way to mitigate the extravagant cost of the UBI, because you wouldn't have to pay the machines to actually do anything. So you'd also have to.
Did you have a presidential candidate? Were you interested in Andrew Yang at all?
Yang and Buttigieg were the two options that I thought were the most realistic. Like, Yang was never going to win. He's too hated by everyone because his ideas are like the UBI. No one wants to implement that. Politically, he's not a viable candidate. Buttigieg was enough of a political, he was enough of a candidate, like a normal, yeah,
enough of a normal Democrat that
he was a viable candidate. And so his ideas were the best of the candidates, and he had the best chance of being elected as one of the candidates. Bernie's ideas are ridiculously extravagant. I wouldn't suggest those. I think he would be a good polar opposite of Donald Trump in the fact that he would be more of a left-leaning extremist in that sense. But Donald Trump's an idiot, and Bernie Sanders isn't. Bernie Sanders would actually do a good job as a president, but I don't think he'd get any of his bills actually passed because they'd get shot down in Congress immediately.
There's no way he would pass. I mean, the watered down versions of his bills were like epic battles to, when Obama first took office.
Yeah.
And he was extraordinarily popular, and he had huge majorities in both the House and the Senate. And, getting Obamacare passed was like a huge ordeal. So, the thing that Bernie was suggesting, there's no way it would get passed. Half the Democrats wouldn't vote for it.
Oh, yeah. So the problem is the Congress and the Senate. The biggest problems with American politics is Congress and the Senate. The Speaker of the House has so much authority that he can just shoot down bills whenever he wants and just decide, well, we're not going to talk about this until 6 months from now. And we're going to set up a specific, just group of people to discuss this prior to that, and not release the papers before.
Right.
Not release the papers.
That's by design. I mean, part of the way the system is structured is to upend radical change and to slow down radical change and work in favor of incremental, sweeping revolutionary change. Our system was designed to thwart, basically, make it too complicated and too many pans in the pie, and you just can't do it.
Well, it's partially true because you have the three powers: the legislative, the judicial, and the executive branch are all trying to implement more laws that give themselves more power, so that they can influence more things. And that's why the Speaker in the House has so much power, because they wanted to make sure that they can mitigate certain kinds of legislation. And it's not specifically by design to prevent sweeping change. It's specifically because each of those branches of government wants more power, and so they're stealing as much power from everyone else as possible, which causes complete government lockdown, which is a huge problem. And that's why the president has so much authority with the executive orders now, which he didn't used to. And the solution to that is just to make Congress and the Senate work the way it should. Like give a line item veto to the president so you can get rid of any kind of extravagant things that do nothing, like state birds on tax bills, which are pointless, and start implementing policies that are good for the American people. Like right now, everyone's taxes are done by the IRS. Like the IRS can just send you a bill and you don't have to do anything. And that would be significantly beneficial to lots of people rather than having them have to go through PayPal or TurboTax or whatever, which as a paid service is just a waste of money because they offer a free service for everyone who makes under a certain number of dollars that they just don't ever promote. So legally, anyone can do your taxes for free right now. You just have to find the TurboTax system, which is hidden in their backlogs, to be able to do it. And the IRS already does it for you. So all of the time and money everyone wastes on taxes is just wasted money for no reason. There's no reason for that at all. It's purely just corporate interests and special interest to get more money. And that stuff we need to get out of politics. We need to make the financial situation for Americans as easy as possible, not as difficult as possible. And the way politics works is the exact opposite of that right now.
Right. Well, the way our politics works right now is that there are powerful interests, and it has to do with who's writing the checks. And they're in both parties. They're just different interests, and their agendas dominate. There's a reason why I think the line item veto has come up for debate, and there's always a reason why they never implement it. I forget exactly why.
Yeah, because then the president can just take out anything he doesn't want, and it gives the president quite a bit of power.
I mean, it's giving the president. I mean, there's been creeping executive branch. The executive branch is getting stronger and stronger for decades.
Oh yeah,
but yeah. Now with the where you can just do, phone calls. And that basically started with Obama, where you could just do an executive order that's kind of like a law. I'm like, oh yeah, how's that working?
Yeah, that's the thing is because Obama's policies were so hard to get passed through, he had to kind of fight for more power, in the executive branch to be able to do anything because the Republicans just hated him. Everyone in the Republican Party just hated him.
Right, but still, the precedent that he set of issuing executive orders for things that were not necessarily supposed to be the purview of the president is now with us, and now presidents have more power than they used to just by that precedent.
Yep. Now every president who gets into office is going to have that power to be able to abuse it however they want, like Donald Trump.
Well, that's yeah. So what are you going to debate when you go do your political debates? You're going to advocate for which positions? Centrist is hard to debate in debates.
Yeah, for certain. So I'd have to be debating against Republicans on some issues and Democrats on other issues, like education, purely libertarian, do the libertarian education system, give everyone vouchers.
So school choice and things like that.
Yep, for sure. That system we know works better because it's what Finland does. So student vouchers for every parent who has a child, you give the voucher to whatever school you want to, send your kid there, you choose.
Right. See, but there you go. There you have special interest because that's a really big thing in the Republican Party, and it's fought hugely in the Democratic Party because of teacher lobbies.
Yep.
Teachers, because they're all part of the public school.
Yep.
So that would you be coming directly up against you. I don't think you could run as a Democrat and not get on board with teachers unions because they'll undercut you. They have that much power in the party.
Yep.
So that's right up against what you're talking about. Like the system has corruption baked into it. So
for sure. And the biggest corruption comes from the healthcare industry because I think 80% or something, like some ridiculous amount of the percent of lobbying is done by healthcare industries because it gets so much money. Like 80% of the federal budget goes to healthcare through Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, all those kinds of things. And so they have such a huge say on what goes on in politics. If you go against the healthcare system, you're pretty much screwed. That's why Bernie gets no say in anything, because if the news agencies start to post things about how Bernie, to support Bernie, then most of their ad revenue, which can come in large part from healthcare interests, they're going to lose it. And that's where they get their money. Like they get their money from ads. And so they can't support Bernie. because they just go broke essentially if they did. And so the healthcare industry is so broken in America and in the way it works and how much money is wasted in that system. That is the biggest way to restrict
Well,
who can be
there's
collected.
also the dysfunction baked into the cake because a huge chunk of people get health insurance from their job,
which is
takes away the
required.
incentive to keep costs down. Because like most people's premiums are being paid by their employer, or a huge chunk, maybe half the country.
Yeah, and that's that problem is a huge problem for America, and that's one of the benefits of the single payer system, which is that it gets rid of that. Like the Postal Service, the U.S. Postal Service, there was a bill that was passed a while ago that required the Postal Service, in order to pay for its employers' healthcare up to a certain number of years or whatever. And as soon as that bill was passed, the Postal Service went from a positive of about $600 million a year to about a negative of like $1 billion a year. And that's why the U.S. Postal Service is costing the government money and not making money, is because of this mandatory employer healthcare system that we have in place. Just getting rid of that.
But how do you get rid of it? Like, that's one of the reasons Bernie struggled with that too, because there were places where, his big appeal is to working class and labor unions are firmly in favor of big healthcare packages because they negotiated those packages. So
yeah, but that's the thing. That's the single payer system solves that problem extremely well if you could get it passed. But yeah, so that's why the benefit of the single payer system is that it would get rid of that limitation on corporations.
Right, and then you're probably somewhat of a free market person, right? You recognize that capitalism brings prices down a lot of times, and the efficiencies in the marketplace. Like if we had more capitalism and more choice in healthcare providers and things like that, that tends to bring costs down automatically. And part of the dysfunction in the system is, people are getting their healthcare through their jobs. So there's no incentive to like shop around for costs.
Well, yeah, that's why the healthcare system is such a really interesting issue, because universal healthcare would solve a lot of things on the Republican side as well as the Democratic side. Like if we stopped forcing employers to give their employees healthcare, then they could spend the money on other things. They could do other things with it. They would have less limitations. Organizations would be able to work better. Companies would be able to function more simply. So getting rid of that requirement would be a huge benefit. And we could do that with Bernie Sanders' idea gets rid of that. And so there should be more support for those kinds of ideas of the single payer systems, because they also benefit corporations.
Well, they're definitely a benefit to corporations, and theoretically, at least, you could start having more free market forces to bear on, the reason why costs skyrocket is there's no incentive to not have them skyrocket. If your health insurance is paying for it, if you're shopping around to see like what's the cheapest best price for, whatever, spleen removal, competition is what brings prices down.
Yeah.
And there's none of that. There's no shopping around because it's all paid for by a provider. So there's no incentive to do that. Yeah.
I mean, I think there should definitely be both. I think you should both have a government-involved system which keeps the price at a very low competitive rate, like UPS does for shipping, and then also have the private corporations like Amazon and FedEx who can ship it on their own, and then the individuals should be able to choose which one they use there. I think we should definitely have both a government-involved system and the free market systems, because when those work together, they work really well.
Right. See, now Frenda would probably agree with you, right?
Probably, I think so. Yeah, we only disagree on like morality, so everything else we pretty much agree on.
Yeah, because he's, as far as I can tell, he's a centrist who like believes somewhat in the free market, and that there needs to be some protections in the free market. That seems to be the most reasonable position.
Yeah, I think pretty much most atheist, like big atheist guys in our community, all pretty much agree on that on both sides.
I thought I tended to think that the atheists skewered far left.
There are those like the Jack LaLanne types. Yeah, those. But most people, those are like the loud minority. There's always in groups, there's a minority who has a really extreme position who gets the most coverage in the news and who gets talked about the most because they're the most interesting position. They're not like well, that's kind of obvious, so we're going to agree with that. So why would we ever talk about that on the news? We want to put the crazy people on the news and give them
the
attention.
Inflammatory ones, the ones who get all the attention because they're so annoying and obnoxious.
Yeah. The majority of people are like centrists like us. Like the majority of people on both sides agree on most of these issues in America. It's only the really extreme people who get posted on the news and anyone talks about because everyone else just agrees on everything.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. And it used to be even more so. It used to be hard to tell the difference between like a centrist Republican and a centrist Democrat.
Yep.
Back in the day, you could put the policies of someone like Bill Clinton down and just look at the policy prescription and be like, is he Democrat or Republican? You couldn't tell.
Yep. I was definitely, and they used to switch back and forth. Like if we look at the old presidential candidates, the Republicans and Democrats would switch to different parties all the time. If we look at the states who when they voted for one president, they'd just vote for the next president. And now it's much more partisan shift where you get Republicans always vote for the Republican candidates, Democrats always vote for the Democratic candidate. There's not as much of a change anymore.
Right. It's just the battleground states where basically the whole election is decided in like 5 key states.
Yep. Yeah, that's another thing we need to solve too. Is we should have get rid of the electoral college. It should be done by person. The population, just whoever the majority should probably win. The single transferable vote system is the best system. I mean, the one criticism against it isn't really a valid criticism. So we should definitely change to a single transferable vote kind of a system. Or ranked choice voting system.
What's a single transferable vote? What's that?
Yeah, so you rank the people you want to vote for. So like Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Biden, whatever. And then if the first person doesn't get enough votes to win, then your vote transfers to the next person that you voted for. So your second choice. And if that person doesn't get enough votes to win, your vote will transfer to the third person. So everyone's vote counts. Everyone's vote will be counted to whoever is elected, versus right now, if you vote for a third party candidate like the Libertarians, then your vote is just gone.
What's the upside of that? Why?
Well, like if you vote for a Libertarian right now, your vote goes away. Like the only counted votes are the two most popular candidates. Everyone else, your vote is just gone. It's not even put in the debate.
You would vote for a Libertarian just to register your protest, but your vote would still count towards, like, let's say Joe Biden.
Right.
Because you.
Exactly. So
yeah, I got you. So
that means that now
if you vote for someone like Ralph Nader, you're not throwing your vote away. You're still voting for Al Gore. It's just he'll be like your third choice or something.
Right, exactly. And so that means that it gives the opportunity for everyone who wants a new candidate like Ralph Nader or something, they can all vote for him instead of saying, because there's always going to be that people like, well, if I vote for Ralph Nader, I'm throwing my vote away. I'd really like the Democratic president to win. I would hate the Republican president to win, so I can't throw my vote away for Ralph Nader. I have to vote for the Democratic Party. But this ranked choice voting system, what it does is, well, I really like Ralph Nader, so I'm going to vote for Ralph Nader first, but then also put my vote in for the Democratic Party in case he doesn't get elected to make sure that Republican doesn't win. So it gives people the option to vote for the third candidate they actually want, rather than forcing them to pick between two options they don't really want.
Right. Now, what about a third party that's in between both the left and the right?
What do you mean?
I always thought that was something that was going to naturally occur, but it never seems to happen.
Oh yeah, that's because that's the voting system we have right now requires you to be either left or right. And if you go for the middle, you're wasting your vote. And because of that voting system, we're not allowed to have those third parties because so many people are voting against the person they hate and not for the person they like. With this ranked choice voting system, it'll allow that third party to exist now, because now you can vote for the person you really want, but still have a vote against the person you don't want at the same time.
Right. So there's actually a decent chance that a third party candidate could win.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he could actually siphon off enough votes from both squads.
Yep.
If you weren't throwing your vote away to, because most of our politics right now is just polarized. It's just, and I can hate either party just as equally. Honestly, they scare me. They both scare me for different reasons, but they scare me just as much. Like when I listen to like SJWs talk and what they want to do, I'm like, oh my god, that's just as horrifying as anything on the far right.
Yeah, I
So
totally agree. But yeah, I think it would completely shift the way our politics is run. Because right now, the best way to
yeah,
get a vote,
it might automatically, organically lead towards the same like reasonable centrist candidate because everybody they'd be able to siphon off votes from both sides of the party
yep.
without appealing to, because most of our politics is appealing to the base,
Oh,
and
it's
that's
worse than that. It's like the best way to get votes in our current system is to attack the other guy. So that guy is so bad that you don't want him, you want me, no matter how bad I am. And so in politics today, the best way to win is just to attack everybody. You want to attack, and your positives really don't make a difference. Like who cares? They just want you to be less bad than that guy. But if we have this ranked choice voting system, then it becomes about who's the best candidate, not who's the worst candidate.
right. Yeah, it could work. It could work. Definitely that has potential.
Yeah, so that's
So
definitely
you
one
should
of the
go
things I'm
debate that. You're gonna go present that in debates.
Yeah, for
Argue
sure.
that
If we can
against.
get James to do more political debates, he doesn't do those very often because they get demonetized. Like any political debate is always demonetized.
Is that really what happens?
Yep.
What else gets? Because there's other things that he'll shy away from. I noticed. Because I always wanted to have conversations about like pop culture phenomenon, but he never wanted to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that might get like when Game of Thrones was ending, I wanted to do debates on Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, that would have been hilarious. But why season 7 is terrible, or season 8?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like have a debate on somebody takes the opposite point of view. No, it's really good, or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's
That would've been a
opened
great
up to that
debate.
more lately. So because now he's doing a wider array of kinds of debates than he used to. So I think that because he has a more of a substantial base size, since his debates with Dillahunt has got him tons and tons of subscribers, he's now willing to do more stuff that is less likely to get large viewer counts.
Yeah, that could have been it. The part of the logic though was that it would get like a really large viewer count because it was what everybody was talking about. I mean, there was like, I think it was PSA Sitch. Is that the guy that Adam Friend streams with? He put out like a Game of Thrones
Yeah.
and analysis, and it shot up past him like 1 million views. So that was part of the logic, is that it would draw attention to the channel, but he didn't. He wasn't that interested. I mean, I didn't really push it. I just suggested it.
Yeah, he might be up for it now. You could try something. You could ask him about something like that.
Yeah, if something occurs to me, I definitely will. All right, my friends. So it's been about hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's
So
probably a good time to wrap up. I gotta go to the store and get some food anyway. So yeah, it was great talking with you. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for coming on.
yeah, this was cool. This was actually a really good conversation. I kind of figured it would be that we get on a wide range of subjects and just kind of have a nice thorough conversation on different topics.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
cool. Thank you for having me, and thank you. I'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to you later.
All right, my friend.
Bye.